There are many different instructions and laws in the book of Deuteronomy, and it is perhaps helpful to just concentrate on a few. And so we're going to be looking at some of the instructions regarding worship, some regarding leadership, kings, prophets, judges, priests, and Levites, and some regarding care for the poor, just to give you a flavor and a focus. Throughout, Deuteronomy is constantly warning against the worship of other gods, of foreign gods. And it is found in so many places. But aside from these, there are a number of very specific instructions regarding where to worship. But you shall seek the place that the Lord your God will choose out of all your tribes as his habitation to put his name there. We have seen before that Deuteronomy is different than, say, Exodus in saying that there will be one place to offer sacrifices. And it is at that one place that people are to bring sacrifices, tithes, donations, gifts, etc. In chapter 12, verse 7, this is a very interesting statement because I think we, as Protestants especially, don't think of going to the temple and offering sacrifices as something joyful. But here it says, "You shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your households together, rejoicing in all the undertakings in which the Lord your God has blessed you." So this is to be a time of celebration when people go to make their sacrifices. Later in the same chapter, it reiterates not to offer burnt offerings in any place you happen to see, but only at the place the Lord your God will choose. But at the same time, there are certain things which in, say, Exodus and Leviticus, which are specifically located in the tabernacle, which now are made available in the various towns. So, for example, the people may slaughter and eat meat with any of the towns. It seems to have been limited in Exodus and Leviticus to meat that was slaughtered at the tabernacle. However, blood is not to be eaten. Blood is the life of the animal and belongs to God. Nor may food that is set aside for the temple or tabernacle be eaten in the towns. So, nor may you eat within your towns the tithe of your grain, etc. So the tithe, your free will offerings, the gifts that you vow to the Lord, those need to be taken to the presence of the Lord at the place that the Lord your God will choose. And this is something your sons and daughters should do, your male and female servants and slaves, the Levites, etc. Again, rejoicing in the presence of the Lord your God in all your undertakings. And then there's a special command here, do not neglect the Levite as long as you live in your land. There is not a whole lot that is said about kings and kingship in Deuteronomy, but it does seem to recognize the possibility. And so here it says, the people will say, I will set a king over me. And according to Deuteronomy, they may indeed do that. We will sort of compare this in next week with what Samuel has to say about kingship. There's a little bit of ambiguity in the Bible as a whole. The requirements for the king are that the king has to be of the community. It can't be a foreigner. He must not acquire many horses for himself. Horses were generally used for chariots. Having a lot of horses means a lot of chariots, means a large military. And the people may not also return to Egypt to get the horses. He must not acquire many wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away. We can think of Solomon and the trouble he ran into because he indeed did acquire many wives. Also, the king is not to acquire a great quantity of silver and gold. Most importantly, he shall have a copy of this law written for him, and it shall remain with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he will fear the Lord his God, observing all the words of the law and the statutes. And also interesting, he is not to exalt himself above other members of the community. In other words, the king is under the command of God and must obey the law. He is not above the law. And even though he rules, he is not to set himself above the community. It talks about prophets in Deuteronomy 13 and how the people must not heed the words of prophets that by omens or dreams tell the people that they should follow other gods. Instead, the people should love the Lord with all their heart and soul. To love is not just having a warm feeling, it is loyalty and obedience. There will be legitimate prophets that will come, that the Lord will raise among the people, and the people are told to listen to those prophets. So if the prophet speaks in God's name, then they are to heed him. But any prophet who speaks in the name of the other gods, or presumes to speak in my name a word that I have not commanded the prophet to speak, that prophet shall die. These words are perhaps what is behind a lot of the attitude of the Pharisees in the New Testament, because they see Jesus as perhaps prophesying and directing the people away from the worship of the one true God. Another class of leadership has to do with judges and officials throughout the tribes. And every town is to have these judges, and justice shall indeed be done. There shall be no bribes. Justice and only justice you shall pursue, so that you may live and occupy the land that the Lord your God is giving you. At the same time, there is to be kind of a supreme judge, we would call kind of a little bit like our Supreme Court, that if cases cannot be decided within towns, then the people can go up to the place the Lord your God will choose and consult with Levitical priests and the judge in office. Okay, so there is a sort of final court of appeal for difficult cases. And we will see that one of the reasons when we get to talking about David is when Absalom, his son, tries to depose David as king. One of the arguments he uses is that the king has not provided the judges, has not appointed the judges to do justice in the land. The Levitical priests and the whole tribe of Levi have no territory of their own. There are, in other passages, certain cities set aside for them, but there is not a whole area designated to the tribe. Thus, they are allowed to eat of the sacrifices that are the Lord's portion. The Levites do not serve at the tabernacle or at the temple all of the time. Instead, they take turns coming up to serve from wherever they live, and they come to the place of worship, and the Levite may minister like all of his brothers, and they all shall have equal portions to eat.